Welcome to our Essential Small Group Series, Session 5. In this session, we meet Jacob. Jacob is the son of Isaac and the grandson of Abraham. And the passage we are exploring comes from the 28th chapter of Genesis, and it's the famous story of Jacob's dream. Now, in the chapter before this, the 27th chapter, we're told that Esau, who is Jacob's older brother, we're told that Esau hates Jacob. And he hates Jacob because Jacob has tricked their father into giving Jacob the greater blessing. We are also told that Esau's only consolation is that when the opportunity comes, he will kill Jacob. Now, Rebekah, the mother of the two boys, she hears of Esau's plan to kill Jacob, and she calls Jacob and Isaac, the father, and she tells them that Jacob has to get out of town. Her plan is for Jacob to travel to Haran to stay with her brother Laban. And then they will send word when Jacob can return after Esau has calmed down and forgotten about what Jacob has done to him. So that's where our passage today picks up. Jacob, he leaves his home in Beersheba and sets off for Haran, which is about 500 miles away. So it's like walking to Chicago from Nashville. It's a long and lonely trip. And we're told that as he walks, he comes to a certain place and he stays for the night. It's interesting, this place, it's referred to twice in our verses as that place. That place. It's a non-place. It's an in-between place. And Jacob, he feels like a non-person. He's a fugitive. He's been banished from his own home. He does not have the protection of the family or the tribe. He is alone. And then it is in this non-place, into this non-person, that God appears. God encounters Jacob. And the encounter makes the non-place a crucial place. And it makes the non-person a crucial person to God's purposes for His world. You know, this story, like the rest of the scriptures, it has as its primary aim to tell us that God is involved in our lives, that God is present to us. The scriptures, their intent is not, first of all, to teach us wisdom, to give us some rules or principles by which we can guide our personal lives. It is first and foremost a place where we can encounter God's words. And it tells us, the scriptures tell us, that the world is a place where we meet God. Now, we are told that Jacob encounters God in a dream. Jacob sees a ladder set up on the earth with the top of it reaching up to heaven and the angels of God ascending and descending on it. This is not a ladder as we typically think of a ladder. It's more of a stairway or a ramp, like the stairways that would lead to the top of the temples in the ancient Near East. The tops of those temples were meant to represent heaven, the dwelling place of the gods. And these stairways provided an avenue of approach from the human sphere to the divine sphere. Priests or divine beings, such as angels, would traverse up and down the stairway, serving as intermediaries for the gods. And so Jacob, he sees this ramp or stairway to heaven with angels ascending and descending. Walter Brueggemann, who has a wonderful commentary on Genesis, writes this. He says, Jacob's world was a world full of terror, full of loneliness. No doubt he was struggling with unresolved guilt. It is into this world that God comes to him while his defenses are down in a dream to present to Jacob an alternative world. An alternative world is presented to Jacob through this dream. The ladder, it symbolizes that heaven and earth are connected, that there is traffic. that heaven is not self-contained and isolated, that the earth and us, we are not stuck with our own limited abilities and capacities. And this changes, this vision, it changes Jacob's predicament, changes his problem radically. Where he had thought he was alone, he comes to find out that he is in the presence of God. Where he had presumed that he had only one goal in mind, which was to survive, God gives him promises. You know, this episode, it reminds me of 2 Kings chapter 6. There's a story there where we find Elisha the prophet and his servant. They're in a city that's being besieged by a great army. And the servant is scared, understandably. He doesn't know what to do. But Elijah is different. He is completely calm, confident, not worried at all. And so the servant says to him, "How can you be so calm?" And Elisha prays, "Oh Lord, please open his eyes that he may see." And with that, the servant looks out and he sees that the mountains surrounding the city, they are filled with chariots of fire. The angels of the Lord were protecting them. That's like the dream Jacob had. He saw for an instant that God is working. He's not unconcerned. Heaven is not closed. And an interesting point to make, you know, this ladder, which is like the ladder to the ancient temples, it's like those stairways, those temple stairways, but it's also different. With those ancient temples, the gods resided at the top, and the priest would serve as an intermediary. He would walk up and down the stairs to bridge this gap. But here, God stands beside Jacob. He's actually not at the top of the ladder. He's beside Jacob. There's no intermediary. He speaks with Jacob directly, intimately. Now, the importance of the dream is not simply this fact that God is nearer to us than we are to ourselves. There are also promises spoken by God to Jacob. The faith of the Scriptures is a faith that is rooted in promises. And so we hear God speaking to Jacob, the fundamental promise, that is, in a sense, the foundation of salvation history, that God will make of Jacob a great nation, that his offspring will have this land, and that all the nations of the earth will be blessed by Jacob's offspring. Now, in your small groups this week, I want you to explore these promises that are given, and explore them not only in relationship to Jacob, but also explore them in terms of your life. 3 things that God promises Jacob. First, God says that I will be with you. I am binding myself to you. Second, God says, I will keep you, or shepherd you, protect you. And then third, God says, there will be a homecoming. I will bring you back to this land. What does it mean for us that there will be a homecoming? At the end of the passage, Jacob responds, the Lord shall be my God. And I know that some people will say that Jacob seems to be hedging his bets with all the ifs in this last little section, but I don't read it this way. Jacob says, the Lord is my God, and this stone, which I have set up as a pillar, will be called Bethel, or in English, the house of God. Jacob commits himself to sustained and disciplined worship, and he will give 1/10 of all that he owns. And that is not just a religious exercise. It is simply an acknowledgement that the land is God's. So the first 1/10 goes back to God without denying that the rest is God's. This dream of Jacob, this dream along the way, it's a dream to remind us that in this covenant history that you and I are a part of, that we encounter and live with God. That God speaks promises to us. It's a dream to remind us that this world is and will one day be completely the house of God.